Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Do you have a valuable card collection but you put zero effort into storage? Do you keep your cards in a box like this?
Or like this.
Something like this? This? Ho, ho, ho. What are we doing here? You need Pastime Marketplace. Pastime Marketplace is the Mercedes-Benz of sports card storage. The cases come in a variety of sizes. They're waterproof, airtight, dustproof, and extremely durable. If you care about your collection, visit PastimeMarketplace.com and treat your cards to the storage they deserve.
Don't forget to use discount code BENCHCLEAR to get 10% off your order.
Yo and hello everybody, Mike Moynihan here, and welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. This is a podcast where I try to dive deep into different teams and eras and players and sets and you name it. I love, really getting in to the heart of different aspects of our hobby, and there's so much of it to cover. That's why I feel like I'm never going to run out of subject matter for this podcast, because there's always cool stuff to talk about. And today is no different. But I didn't want to do today by myself because, again, nobody wants to hear. I did an episode by myself, and that was probably the last one I'm going to do. So I brought back my trusty co-host, Andy Davis. Hey, Andy, how are you?
I'm good, Mike. It's good to be back. I've been a little bit under the weather for, the last week or so. So it's good to be back.
Well, I'm sure everybody's glad to have you back, especially me, because now I don't have to carry the whole bloody thing. You can carry it.
Well, we're setting up for disappointment if that's the expectation, but we'll try.
Well, so today, man, I want to cover the Dodgers, the Brooklyn/Los Angeles Dodgers, because I think they have just one of the coolest histories of any team in Major League Baseball history, and especially in the vintage area that we like to focus on this podcast. It was just a time of just amazingness going on in New York, right? You had the Giants that were really good, the Yankees, of course, and the Dodgers. So I think a New York team was in the World Series like 15 out of 16 years through the late 40s and through the early 60s. Or so. It was some crazy number. I bet our guests that we're going to have on tonight will know that number, but it was dominated by New York baseball, and the Dodgers were right in the middle of it. What do you remember about Dodgers? What do you think about when you think of vintage Dodgers?
I guess the obvious guys that come to mind: Jackie Robinson, Duke Snider, Pee Wee Reese, just guys like that. I think we were talking before we came on. You were talking about the Ken Burns baseball documentary, and yeah, I mean, like I'm kind of like you. Like I watch that at least once a year, so it's just a great refresher, and it's like you learn something new or hear something you maybe didn't hear before when you watched it every time. So the Dodgers very prominent in several of those episodes. So yeah, and I'm really excited about our guest too. I mean, he's obviously from that area. I mean, not from the area that from then, but from the area where they play now. But yeah, he's a cool dude, very knowledgeable. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the Ken Burns series, because just like you, I watch it every offseason. It's a habit for me. And Julie, my wife, whenever it comes on and she sees it starting to record, because they play a couple episodes a week on the MLB network, and she says, what the heck, are we watching this again? And I'm like, yes, I'm watching it again. And so I have to wait usually till she goes to sleep. But what really sparked my interest in doing this episode is a couple of weeks, maybe a week ago or so, I was watching some stuff on the Dodgers through that documentary. And I was like, I got to do something on the Dodgers. And you and I are not Dodger experts, are we?
I'm not. For sure.
Self-admittedly, not a Dodgers expert.
Yeah.
But we wanted to bring a Dodgers expert on because if we're going to talk about the Dodgers, let's talk about somebody that knows something about it. So we decided to have Josh, rated rookie, on with us. Josh, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Mike. Definitely not a Dodger expert, but appreciate you having a Kobe collector on the show, and I'm excited to join a Russell Westbrook collector to discuss today. So this should be fun.
Yeah, this does seem kind of backwards. I probably should have had Pepino Man, goodness gracious, he works for the Dodgers. But this is a podcast, and a lot of people that listen to the podcast may not know the YouTube community that there's a lot of Dodgers fans out there. And congrats on your World Series win this year, by the way.
Thank you. Still basking in the glory. It's been 32 years, so we earned it.
Yeah, you did. I've been a Rangers fan for all 48 years of their existence. We have 0, so don't. Here we go. Let's dive straight into some Dodgers history, and they started in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn, one of the boroughs of New York City, but very distinct. Brooklyn had they called it the bedroom of New York City. It was where everybody, lived, and then they would travel into Manhattan or somewhere else to work. And so it was a very community type feel, and Ebbets Field was right in the middle of it. And so it was your neighborhood like literally the neighborhood ballpark. You could walk down the street and hear the roar of the crowd, and it was such a different feel. There are a few places like that today. I guess you could say maybe Wrigley Field has that feel a little bit. But most ballparks aren't literally in a neighborhood. And so the Dodgers had this unique connection with their fans and with the community. And they were so bad. For so long, they were terrible. They changed names. Like they were called the Robins at one point, and the Subpoenas, and I can't even remember all the names, the Trolley Dodgers, and then they became the Dodgers. They had several other names in there in between. But when they became the Dodgers, Wilbert Robinson was their manager back in the day. He's a Hall of Famer. But they had guys like Dazzy Vance and Babe Herman. I think Babe Herman hit like 393 one year or something. So I can't remember to take out the trash, but I can tell you that Babe Herman hit 393. I want to say it was 1934-ish, 35. Don't know where that comes from in my brain. And then in the post-war era, the Dodgers really became something special. And that's what I want to focus on, since that is the focus of this podcast. Do you have any Dodger, was your family Dodger fans, or how did you become a Dodgers fan, Josh?
Yeah, grew up a Dodger fan. My dad was a huge Dodger fan. Sandy Koufax was actually his favorite player. So I grew up with those stories, and had no real other choice but to hate the Giants and love the Dodgers. Yeah,
there is that love-hate relationship between Dodgers and Giants fans for sure. And that stems all the way back from New York, right? They moved essentially at the same time out to California. They stayed in the same division, certainly the league, but when divisions came about, they stayed in the same NL West. And so they've always had this rivalry, famous rivalry, right? The Giants win the pennant. The Giants win the pennant. What year was that? 51? Bobby Thompson shot heard around the world.
That seems right. Yeah. I'll take your word for it.
Bobby Thompson off Ralph Branca.
Okay.
Yep. I think it was Willie Mays' first or second year. But that was a bad day for the Dodgers. But anyway, you don't remember any of that. Neither does your dad. He hasn't even been a fan that long. But going back to those teams in the 40s and 50s and 60s, when they crossed over to California, they were still great, and they kept that greatness going. But let's talk about the biggest one, what the Dodgers did, and that's bring Jackie Robinson into Major League Baseball. I don't think you can come up with a moment or an event that had as much of a lasting impact on baseball as Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, Branch Rickey having the courage to go ahead and bring Jackie in at a time when no one else was willing to do that. He was willing to be the pioneer in that way. And obviously, baseball is better, and certainly the history of baseball since then has changed dramatically because of that. And yeah, I mean, that's, to me, that would be, if I was a Dodgers fan, which I'm a Cubs fan, so sorry, Josh, but we have a lot of names for you Dodgers, but not just them bums. We got a lot of other ones, but yeah, if I was a Dodgers fan, that's definitely one of the things that I would be most proud of as far as the history of the franchise goes. What about you, Josh? Can you kind of discuss maybe how you feel about that, maybe how your dad and others in your family may have felt about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tremendous, right? Because Jackie actually, I think, grew up in Pasadena, then went to UCLA, was a phenomenal, athlete, track star across the board. Unbelievable, player, of course, but maybe not necessarily the best player, but he was probably the best player suited to do what he did, with kind of how he handled it, how he was able to deal with, everything that came with him and the slurs and everything he had to put up with, and then going on to have the career that he had. And the way he, kind of helped turn around the Dodgers and energize them, really, coming out of that dem bums era that Mike was talking about.
Yeah, so Jackie has some pretty key cards in baseball card history as well. His cardboard era starts in as early as 47, right? You have the Bond Bread issues that were done, which are super expensive, even in low grades. But those are kind of his first cards, I guess. And then he has a 48 leaf card, which is a key card. Josh, do you have that card? I can't remember.
No, I just have some of the Topps issues starting in 53.
Great. We'll go there in a second. But that leaf card is super tough to get. Great card, beautiful card. Then you had his 49 Bowman card, which is also considered a rookie, even though I think the leaf is, because it came out. Well, the leaf can be 48/49, right? But the Bowman card is also a beautiful card. And then he has a 50 Bowman, if I remember right. Then he has a bunch of Topps cards starting in 52. 52, 53, 53 Topps. There it is, card number 1.
That's right. JP was just saying that this is one of his favorite cards of all time.
It is. It's got to be top 10 for most people if you just appreciate the history of the cardboard. He has a beautiful 54 Topps, yellow back, if I remember right, like a yellow background card. Gorgeous card. Oh, there it is. Josh showing it right there. 54 Topps. He has a 55 Topps as well, little horizontal card action. There it is, another yellow background. Man, Josh came prepared. And then his last card is 56 Topps.
That's right. And
so Jackie, do y'all know why he retired after the 56 season?
No.
They heard, the move was pending, right? And he just didn't want to make the move back to LA. He was just tired. I mean, can you imagine what he had been through in his, about a decade in Major League Baseball? I mean, gosh, what a just beating that he had to go through psychologically and physically and everything. He was just worn out. I don't blame him one bit for saying, y'all go ahead and go on to LA. I'm going to stay here. And of course, Jackie became a Hall of Famer. Josh, what is your favorite Jackie Robinson card?
I would probably go with JT's 53 pick. I just think the look of that one is tremendous. Would love to pick up the 52 at some point, and some of the other ones you mentioned, of course, are just astronomical, but love the design of the 53. How about you guys?
Andy?
Yeah, I think for me, it would probably be the 48, 49 Leaf, whichever you want to call it. And that's one of those. I mean, it seems like every time I'm on one of these episodes, like we always bring up cards that I missed the boat on that I really wanted to get, and then they just like explode in price. That's one of them that was kind of on my want list for a long time. And you just kind of always assume that, it's going to be there, relatively the same price. I'll wait, get that later, and not the case anymore. So that, I may have to find a new favorite.
The Dodgers won the World Series in 55, if I'm remembering right. And that was a big deal because they'd finally got off the schneid. The Yankees had beaten them, and the Giants would beat them out for the pennant, and then the Yankees might beat them in the World Series. And so for them to finally get off the schneid in 55 was a huge deal for Brooklyn. And then, of course, they ripped the whole heart and soul out of the community and moved the team. It's got to be pretty devastating. But another key, there were tons of key players on those teams in the early 50s. You've got Duke Snider, of course, and Gil Hodges and Pee Wee Reese, and even, I'm trying to think of pitcher Carl Furillo, I think was, Ralph Branco was a great pitcher, even though he gave up the home run to Bobby Thompson. He was a great pitcher. But one of the key guys to me, and one of the guys that I think is most underappreciated in the whole hobby, is Roy Campanella. And, he was a catcher that started in the Negro Leagues as well. His first card is 1949 Bowman, which I recently picked up. And I'm so glad that I did. Andy was there when I picked it up a couple of weeks ago at a card show in Dallas. And I'm so glad I picked it up. And it's funny for me to hype a card once I've got it. That's pretty easy, right? That's like, not really fair, but all of Campy's cards are gorgeous. What do you guys think about Roy Campanella, his impact on the game, his impact on the hobby? Do you think he's underrated? All of those questions. Josh, start with you.
Well, first of all, I'm really jealous about that card because I've been looking at it for a while and asked a few guys about it at the last National, and I should have bought it, of course. But yeah, Campanella, you mentioned Jackie Robinson. I'm sure we're going to get to Koufax. Like, one thing that jumps out is how great they were in a limited amount of time, right? And so, of course, we have the auto accident with Campanella, but just how great he was and the impact that they made. And, some of these guys played for around a decade or so, and you compare that to, a 20-year career, but they got so much done in a limited amount of time.
Andy?
Yeah, first off, let me say that for anybody out there listening, one of the common themes that you will hear throughout all the episodes is us talking about cards that we wish we would have bought. You never hear us talk about, man, I wish I wouldn't have bought that card, but we always wish we would have bought this card. So if you have a chance to pick up a card that you want, take our advice and go ahead and get it. Yeah, I would say Campanella, when you talk about the greatest catchers of all time, he's not one of the first guys that a lot of people think of, but I mean, if you just look at the numbers and his impact on the teams that he played on, I mean, he absolutely should be. But he did have his career shortened. So I think that may, I don't know, I guess hurt him whenever people are thinking about the all-time greats at the catcher position. But yeah, I think he is probably underrated and undervalued for sure.
He did win 3 MVP awards.
Right.
I mean, he was pretty stellar in a time where there were lots of great players in the league. It's not like it was, a bunch of chumps out there. It was a heyday of baseball during, the early 50s and mid 50s when he was winning these MVP. I mean, you had Willie Mays in the National League. You had Hank Aaron. It's not like there were a bunch of no names.
I mean, look at the guys on his own team.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
And he, again, only played 10 years in the majors, but I think he would have played, because he was only 35 when he quit playing. I think he had another probably 2 or 3 years left. He was planning on making the move with the Dodgers to LA, but obviously got hurt in a car accident and was paralyzed, and that ended his career. So you've got one of my favorite cards of Campanella that I just think about all the time when I think about Campy is his 53 tops. And if you haven't seen it, you need to go look it up, because it's just a great portrait shot of Campanella, and he's leaning back and he's got his cap on. And he's got this tremendous grin on his face, and he just looks like, man, I'm just happy to be a Brooklyn Dodger. It's just this great photograph or art, I guess. 53 tops are kind of painted pictures, and it's just such a beautiful baseball card. His last card is 57 tops. Although he does have a card in 58 tops. I can't remember what the name of it is. Gosh darn it. Because it's in the 300 great part. Symbol of Courage. That's it. Symbol of Courage. And it shows Campanella in a wheelchair. And that's in 58 tops. But his last playing days cards is 57, which is also another great simple card. Batting. He's taking a batting pose, on the sidelines or whatever. And it's a great card.
I think that was a 59, the Symbol of Courage. I remember that.
Sorry. You're right.
But, one thing that jumps out too is like you compare it to modern times and how hard it is to collect players, and all these guys is just relatively simple in terms of very few cards, and it's even fewer than like Clemente or someone else whose career got cut short. But you're just talking a handful of cards if you want to do a run for one of these players.
Yeah, for sure. And the problem is price, right? Right. If you want to get a decent mid-grade Campy card, well, you can buy. I remember buying the 53 tops last year. Again, this was last year, right? Lots changed in a year, but I think I paid $80, and I have a PSA 5 of that card in the 53. So I don't know what they are today. Do you guys ever? That's another funny point. I don't look at cards once I buy them. I don't go back and go, man, what's that? Maybe occasionally, but I'm not researching the card like you do when you're on the hunt for it. Do y'all do the same thing?
I think Josh really nailed it on the head when you were saying you don't know what the price of it is now, and he said more. That's usually the case with anything, I guess, from last year to this year. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of guilty of that. I do kind of pay attention, I think, just to kind of see what's going on. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I have my spreadsheet, which a lot of us do, and then I also right now have a Card Ladder membership. So they don't have a ton of vintage stuff. That's probably an area they got to add to. I think they have like one Koufax card in this Project 2020. So there's definitely holes in there, but I get a sense for kind of how the market's going that way.
Josh, do you have any Campy cards at all?
I think I have the 53 somewhere, and then got the 56. So
beautiful 56. Love that card.
Love that card. Love the half.
Now, does he have any like oddball or regional issues that you guys know of, or is it just basically the tops and Bowman?
We have the wrong guests on here to answer that question. I genuinely don't know.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, I don't know either, obviously. So
I'm sure they do. I just don't know what they are.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we've covered Jackie and Campy. As their careers are winding down, two great Dodger pitchers are about to begin their careers. And you've got Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale. Let's talk about Drysdale first. We'll leave Koufax till the very end, since I know that's one of Josh's favorite guys to talk about. It's funny how Drysdale gets totally, I think, discounted for his career because he played with Koufax. To me, it feels like people don't talk about Don Drysdale. They talk about Sandy Koufax if you talk about Dodger great pitchers. And Drysdale was no slouch. Drysdale was the real deal back then. His rookie card is 57 tops. Very simple card, portrait card of Drysdale. Do you have one of those, Josh?
I don't. I'd love to pick that one up.
You need to get one of those. That's one of those, hey, when's the best time to buy a Drysdale rookie now. And then he has cards all the way, but he only played till 69. Like 69 is his last Topps card. I need to look up his stats real quick while I'm sitting here. But what do you guys?
I mean, that's an
Go ahead.
top. I mean, I think he's a incredible, all-time player. But that's an interesting thought, like being the number 2, right? The second banana, if you will. Like that happens modern day as well. You got the Braves, Acuna, and Freeman seems to get overlooked, right? And so it always seems to happen if you're a great player, but there's just someone even better on your team. Inevitably, you kind of get overlooked.
Andy, you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And just to prove that I agree with that, I don't really know a lot about Drysdale, to be honest.
Well, I know he appeared on an episode of the Brady Bunch, I think, with Wes Ferrell back when I was a kid. So,
okay,
that's what I know about. No, Drysdale became really famous once he became I say really famous to younger people when he was, he did broadcasting forever.
Yeah.
And so people got to hear him be a broadcaster, but he won 20 games twice. He was just one of those consistent pitchers. I mean, he had a sub-3 ERA for his entire career. He did win a Cy Young Award. He was an all-star 8 times. He only had a 14-year career. He quit at 32, which is just amazing.
What was his reasoning for quitting so young?
Well, Koufax's reasoning, I think, is the story is just more famous. I wish I knew more. Do you know any details about that, Josh, about Drysdale?
No, I don't know. You mentioned the Cy Young. The one interesting thing about the Cy Young back then, it was across the majors, right? So if you were the Cy Young, you were winning it for both leagues. And I think that was 62, right?
Let's look. It was 62. Very good. He was 25-9. That's pretty good.
Really good.
Yeah. Another interesting thing about Drysdale and Koufax, they actually negotiated their contract together one year. So they went in as a tag team, and basically it was a get both of us or get neither of us.
Wow. Power move.
Real power move.
I like
and
it.
They actually held out from that. They were ready to sit out the whole season if the Dodgers didn't pay them collectively, what they wanted. Pretty interesting. Yeah, that's a cool story. That's also told in the Ken Burns documentary. They talk about that. Really cool. So yeah, that was 66. They got more than $100,000 a year by negotiating their contracts together. Yeah, it doesn't say here why he retired, but go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are obviously hilarious when you compare it, but I mean, that's not the shortest career, when you compare it to some of these other guys.
True. 14 years. And he was a very durable guy. I mean, he led the league in starts 4 straight years, 62, 63, 64, and 65. So it wasn't like, I mean, he had 42 starts in some of those years. Guys today are lucky to get 30, 35, a normal in a 5-man rotation, kind of system that we have today. They were workhorses back then. And he had
the World Series, so you're playing more games, high pressure, probably 4 days rest. So that also puts Mike Trout doesn't have to worry about that as much compared to some of the players who are in the playoffs every year, right? That's definitely
right. Yeah, he had 21 complete games in 1964 and 20 in 1965. I mean,
yeah, see, that's even more impressive than, the 42 starts or whatever. Like, because, these guys, when they went out there, their goal wasn't to get through 6 innings like it is for a lot of guys now. It was to finish the game.
Right.
That's pretty incredible.
Very, very different mentality than they have today, for sure. All right, let's talk about Koufax, because I am fascinated by the life story and career of Sandy Koufax and have been for a long time. Josh, what did your dad love about Sandy Koufax?
I mean, I think most people who grew up in that era just think he's the best pitcher of all time. I think he would pretty clearly be, considered that if he had pitched longer, but everyone has just stories around how incredible he was. And then there's the Koufax the man, right, where, he didn't pitch on Yom Kippur, a Jewish high holiday during the World Series, and the lore around that. And then he came back in that same series. I think that was 65 against the Twins. And he pitched Game 7 on 2 days rest to win the title. So, he was a winner, dominant, probably had one of the most dominant stretches of all time. And then anyone who kind of had the opportunity to see him, just say he was the best that they've ever seen.
Well, his career, didn't start off too great, right? I mean, through 1960, he was a sub 500 pitcher for his career in terms of wins and losses. So in 61, he becomes the Sandy Koufax. He got in the Hall of Fame basically for 6, not just good seasons, not just great seasons, but all-time seasons. 6 in a row. It was insane, right? He won 3 Cy Youngs in that period. He won a National League MVP. He won a couple of World Series. He won the Triple Crown, the pitching Triple Crown in 63, 65, and 66. So there's got to be a story somewhere about Koufax and what changed for his career.
I mean, he was a wild pitcher at first, and he wasn't even that into baseball from what I understood. He was into basketball. And I think when he was in college, the basketball coach was also the baseball coach and kind of brought him in. But he was all over the map at first, and it took a little bit of time for him to really hone in, and just the ability to, I think he had kind of a rising fastball, just blow batters away with that. And like sometimes if his curveball wasn't working, he was like Rivera, right, where it's just one pitch, but no one could touch it. And he was so good that even post-retirement, he would come in and throw batting practice sometimes and still no one could hit it. I mean, that pitch was just insane.
Well, it says on some things that I'm reading right now as we're doing the stream that Koufax, at the beginning of the 61 season, he was ready to quit baseball. He's just like, he was a very, again, average pitcher, wasn't as dominant. And he was told to start an exhibition game, and he walked the bases loaded on 12 pitches. And his catcher comes out and says, look, why don't you try not to throw as hard in order to try to have better control? And something clicked. And Sandy Koufax became Sandy Koufax, who, again, you're talking about a guy who quit literally at his peak. He won the Cy Young after the 66 season. He was dang near the MVP again. He was second in the MVP race like he had been the year before. He won 27 games, a 1.73 ERA, 41 starts, 27 complete games. And he goes, I think the quote was, I want to be able to hold my grandkids, someday. I don't want my arm to fall off. And it's a lot of pressure to do that. So he quits at 30 years old, which is, I mean, goodness gracious. Can you imagine today a player saying that and how much money they would throw at him to try to get him to keep pitching?
Yeah, I mean, he was, I think, getting cortisone shots all the time. I mean, he must have been in so much pain. Like the most modern day equivalent that I can think of cross sports, though, is Barry Sanders, who to me was the best running back I've ever seen. Short career, in the conversation for the best ever, but is obviously that abbreviated career. And you go out on top, and people remember you that way, right? So, it's hard to compare greatness, but it reminds me of Barry Sanders in certain ways.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And do you guys think that maybe that helps Sandy Koufax's legacy with today's fans, as far as, because you didn't see him have those late career struggles as he got older. he left at the peak. So that's, like Josh said, that's how everyone thinks of him that way. Nobody thinks about the early couple of years where he struggled, but they just think of those 6 years, and then there's no struggle at the end of his career. So he just kind of went out on top. You think that helps his legacy?
Yeah, I think there's some lore around him, right? And he was kind of a recluse and like would move every few years. Was very hard to track down. Didn't do press for many years, and so he had a very private life. And I think that kind of built his kind of legendary status up a little bit more. And then the other component, which I think makes a lot of people want to collect him too, is he's the best Jewish player of all time, right? So, being top, and I don't even know who would be number 2 potentially.
Hank Greenberg.
Probably Greenberg.
Yeah, I was about to say, I bet Brian Roth knows.
Yeah, Bregman's not making the cut anymore. So being the best Jewish player of all time, having that kind of greatness in the short period of time, I think makes him super collectible. But still, until recently, of course, the 2020 run up, I think pitchers are still generally more affordable than position players, right?
So Koufax's rookie, let's talk about the cardboard with Koufax. 55 tops, classic, iconic card. There it is. Josh is showing it right now. What grade do you have that in? That looks beautiful.
That's a 6.
Oh,
Got on that. My dad had a 3, and I'm happy to upgrade. One thing I was thinking about was, to me, this is my favorite Koufax card. I think it's his most, beautiful looking card. And how often does that happen where your rookie card is, of course it's subjective, but your rookie card is the best looking card that you have?
it's rare. I can't think of.
Happened with Mike Schmidt. I mean, it didn't happen with a lot of guys. You can think of some pretty ugly rookie cards, right?
Hank Aaron.
Hank Aaron is probably the best other one, right?
But Koufax, and here's the thing that we're not talking about that we should. Koufax is still alive, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about this on a previous episode about getting players with, we did that with Eric, those back pages, about some of these players, and we talked about Koufax specifically, that are still alive, that if you want to get, the only place for these cards to go is higher. When Koufax passes away, he's not living forever. When Koufax passes away, where are these cards going to go? Right? Andy, do you have a Koufax rookie?
I do not.
Well, yep. See, we're adding to Andy's wish list. His Christmas list is just getting longer and longer.
I'm gonna be pretty broke pretty soon. With all the
cards he's gonna buy, but that, how much do y'all think I think Josh, you hit on it, being a pitcher. I think pitchers are generally underappreciated in the hobby. And the fact that Koufax is still alive, do you think that mildly suppresses his values, or do you think that's becoming irrelevant?
I think it still suppresses it. I mean, we saw it with Bob Gibson and who else, Seaver this year. Like, you would think the price would be baked in, like you said. He's 84. People, not going to live forever. But there is this thing, as soon as someone passes away, it gets into the news, and people, I guess, are more reactionary than you would expect. So, thankfully, he's still pretty involved, and he seems to be in good health at 84. But yeah, I mean, the time is now to pick up these guys' cards.
For sure. See, Andy, he's going on eBay right now. He's not even paying attention to the stream. He's just typing away.
There we go.
So Koufax is rookie 55. Then he's got, of course, 56, 57. He's got all the way through 1966 as his last card. So that's, like you said earlier, Josh, you can get all of his cards pretty easily if you just wanted a base tops run. There's the gorgeous 56. Is that the same portrait from 55, if I remember right?
They're pretty similar, but I don't think they're.
No, they're different. Okay.
For sure.
Yeah. I have 59. It's kind of cool. Yellow background. Got the 60 and 62. And then this one's a little bit of an oddball, the 64. Another factor that I think infected the Koufax market, because it definitely came up, is Project 2020 this year too, and so that brought a little bit more attention to this, just like the 52 tops Jack you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So does your dad have a complete run of the Koufax cards?
No, he basically had some 59s and 60s, and then that 56. He thought they were much better grade than they were. Of course, everyone expects, I'm going to get PSA 8s and 9s.
Not quite.
Happens to me every year with my cards.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a 10. Oh, it might be an 8. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 7.
It's a 5.
Do you think Koufax's stuff is still reasonably affordable, Josh?
I mean, outside of his rookie, yeah. The rookie has come up a bit. I think for like a PSA 6, you're talking like 17 to 100 to 2K. And then, you can obviously go down from there. But, long term, it's a highly desirable card, so I don't see it coming down too much.
I see Koufax, I'm buying all these cards for my collection, all the Hall of Famers from that era. And Koufax is often the most expensive pitcher in any given set. Yeah. If you were to look at any of those mid to late 50s sets, early 60s sets, non-rookie cards, Koufax is the most expensive pitcher. I'm trying to think of other ones. There's really not even anyone close. On the hitter side, you got Aaron and Mays and Mantle and a bunch of guys that are more expensive than Koufax. But in terms of pitchers, he's it. And there's a reason. It's legit. I mean, it's totally, you can totally see why that is. It's justified is the word I was looking for. Totally justified for him to be the highest priced card in those sets for pitchers.
Yeah, and I think that even his rookie card to me is pretty affordable. I mean, because of the fact, like you guys talked about, I mean, he's mentioned as one of the greatest pitchers of all time, like not just of his era, just period. So, I mean, it may sound expensive to some people, but when you put it in perspective of where he fits in the history of the game, it's really not that bad.
Yeah, Josh, I'm gonna do a quick look. Tell a cool story about Koufax and your dad. Why does your dad like Koufax so much? Did you already tell me that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, growing up, he was just his hero. And then, people collect off memories, right? It's not just about the stats and,
So your dad, as a kid, did he collect baseball cards?
Yeah, he collected in 59 and 60. And
just
so
those 2 years?
Those were just the 2 years. And he should have collected vintage, I guess. He should have been more like Mike.
Oh, man. Wouldn't that have been something?
Busting the packs. I mean, that's how most kids are, right? It was just, opening the packs, and then I went through them later, graded some of them, and, made the sets. So that's how I kind of got into the hobby in the, late 80s.
That's so awesome. A PSA 3 Koufax, they sell for between $400 and $500, which to me still sounds really cheap.
It is.
And you can get nice. I have a nice 3 in my collection, and people, there are greater snobs out there that, I can't have anything lower than a 5 or 6. Well, get ready to pay the big bucks. But if you want to just have a good example of a card like that, and I'm not saying that's chump change, $400 to $500 is a lot of money, but it's not as much as you might expect a card like that to go for even in that type of grade. So, Andy, we've just found that should be your next purchase.
eBay bucks right now. Do it.
That's right. 5%.
5%, right?
Yeah, on a $400 card, that's $20, man.
I know. How can I not do it?
Yeah. I mean, on the basketball side, everyone's having like the GOAT conversation. It's always like MJ, LeBron, where's Kareem stand? And it's always a conversation happening. And it's strange that in baseball, it doesn't happen quite as much. Everyone just says, okay, Trout's the best player right now. You don't get the Trout versus Betts or Manning Brady type conversation very often. And I never hear like the best pitcher of all time. Like people aren't really comparing Cy Young or Walter Johnson or Kershaw or, you know, whoever else to Koufax. So if that ever became more of a thing, you could also expect prices to go up.
Why is that?
That
baseball isn't done that way. It's like everybody they're left in their era, you know what I mean? And there's little crossover, let's say, in terms of comparing players across eras in baseball.
Seems like it's so numbers driven in baseball. You almost can't have the conversation easily because people just say, well, Trout's WAR is blah, blah, blah. And suddenly the conversation's over and you can't compare them to Betts. But I think it's interesting to have those type of conversations because winning matters, right? And in basketball and football, quarterbacks especially, you're looking at the Super Bowls, you're looking at the NBA championships. In baseball, it's like, what would it take for Betts to be in that conversation of best player? What would it take for a Kershaw, you know, to be in the conversation? And it's probably not just solely WAR. Maybe there is a, you know, playoff performance or number of World Series titles that factors in.
Yeah, there's a modern look at wins. Let's talk about pitchers because that's what we're on. But wins don't matter anymore. Really? Isn't the whole point of pitching the game to win the game? I mean, to me, to completely discount wins as something to tell you how. And Jacob deGrom caused that, by the way, I think. And Felix Hernandez, you know, pitchers like that. They're so great, but they're sub 500 pitchers because their team sucks. Well, I don't know that you can just say, I'm not saying they're not great pitchers. I'm not saying DeGrom's really good. And could DeGrom win 25 games with the Yankees? Maybe, you know, we don't know that. And so it cracks me up when people just completely, you know, well, wins don't matter. Oh, yeah, they do. That's why you play the game. You're trying to win the game. Look at a guy like Steve Carlton, who won 25 games on a last place Phillies team or something, if I remember right. He won like 40% of the team's victories were Steve Carlton. So if you're good enough, you can be that dominant, right? So I agree with you, Josh. I think wins do matter. I think.
Yeah, I mean, whose career would you rather have? Would you rather have Griffey's career, who was probably the better player, or Jeter's career? If you could just, you know, go through and have that career.
I mean, the championships do matter. That's why you play, right?
Yeah, Jeter's got money too.
Yeah, Jeter did get a lot of money.
Have a pretty good life too. But I mean, that thought, right? Manning versus Brady, you know, Betts versus Trout, whatever the comparison is. Griffey was pretty clearly a better player than Jeter. Jeter never won the, you know, MVP even, but
for sure. And that could be a great argument, though. I think that's a great point. You go, well, somebody could say Griffey, and you could make an easy case for that. And then all the Jeter people would say is 5 rings or however many rings they got, right? That's what they hang their hat on. And well, Griffey literally generational talent, right? I mean, 600 plus home runs, first ballot Hall of Famer. Neither of them played for the Dodgers, which is supposed to be the point of this podcast, but whatever. We're just kind of going off.
Here. Let me go ahead and reel it in here, guys.
It's like, man, we could really have, maybe this is another episode to talk about that, but I'd rather have Griffey's regular season career and Jeter's postseason career. Could you combine that and make like greatest player ever would be that?
Yeah.
That would be probably true.
Someone would have a tough time convincing me that Griffey wasn't the better player of the two. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, Jeter just played on great teams. And he was great. I'm not saying Jeter wasn't really, really good. But
for sure.
Man, all right, back to the Dodgers. 2020 World Series champs, Los Angeles Dodgers. Doesn't really count, by the way. It's a COVID season.
Oh, don't start with me.
There's going to be an asterisk next to the World Series championship.
You already lost one to the Astros. Don't get me started.
I'm just excited a team actually won a World Series here in Arlington, you know, because it ain't going to be the Rangers anytime soon.
That was the first.
It was the first World Series that was won in the city of Arlington. But, man, what a great just talking through the cardboard history of these guys, and there's so many more Dodgers players we could talk about, but we wanted to keep it reasonably limited, and those 4 guys just kind of jumped out at me in terms of their cardboard impact, what they've done for the hobby in terms of being popular, and just their impact on the game of baseball. There's no doubt the Dodgers have left a mark, and it started with Jackie and has continued all the way through 2020. So Josh, man, thanks for joining the show here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Is this your first podcast?
Yeah, I believe so.
You should change your name from Rated Rookie to Podcast Rookie. And why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on YouTube and that kind of thing? Any other social
Rated I guess Rated Rookie Cards, I think, on Instagram. So check it out.
Okay. Rated Rookie. Josh's collection, Andy will agree with me, is absolutely bananas. It's so good.
I mean, I told Josh, like, I think it was a couple of weeks ago when he put out his top 100 cards in his collection. I was like, dude, this is like one of the best videos I've ever seen on YouTube. Like, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, if you collect cards, you will like it because there's a little bit of something for everyone in there. And
Yeah, because it's multi-sport, right? It's all kinds of, including a hockey card, if I remember right, is in there. So
got tennis, he's got everything.
Golf, yeah. So must watch Josh's top 100 cards in his collection. You'll be impressed. If you're not, we need to talk.
Leave the hobby. Leave the hobby if you're not impressed.
Yeah, right. You don't know what you're talking about. So go check out Josh. Andy, thanks again, man, for co-hosting with me. As always, I've missed you. It's not the same without you. It took getting Josh on the show to get Andy to want to come back. It was like, and I think Josh had something to do with it too. So, hey, I want Andy to be there because Mike's boring. I totally get it, by the way. That's true.
That was supposed to be kept off the record. No, I'm happy you're back healthy, man.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Well, everybody out there, thanks again for listening. We really appreciate it. It means a lot to us. Just keep supporting the podcast. Let us know what you think. If you're on YouTube, leave us a comment, like, subscribe to Bench Clear Media, and we will catch you guys on the next episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. Have a good one and keep collecting.